digital photos for that. Ready?
I believe so. Let's double check. We're good.
All right, hey, good to have both of these guys here with us. Hey, Chris, let's talk about the kind of establishing a tone with the program when you came in. You had a mindset that you're going to go two platoon football. You're going to do things a little different. You recreated an aura, I guess you could say it that way. And Cory was when you made the transition. Cory didn't change a thing, and I thought sometimes the best move is no move at all.
I know, back when I first got there, Cory used to get down on his hands and knees outside my office door and listen to everything that was going on. So he had the inside information for a long, long, long time. But we just, the two programs I'd come from, we'd had success, and I kind of knew what I wanted to do. I remember when I applied for the job, when school board members said, do you have a 3-year plan or a 5-year plan? I said, no. He said, you don't. I heard you're organized. He said, do you have any kind of plan? I said, yeah, my plan is we're going to win right now, this year. That's my plan. And that's kind of the way we went. And I remember the only thing that I got resistance on, I got resistance on 2 platoon from the players. I remember Dennis Bonnick held up his hand at our first meeting and said, you can't do that. And I said, why not? He said, it takes 22 players. You only got 5 here. He says, counting Weston. He's not that good. That was his good buddy. And Weston was good. And the other one the coaches didn't like is I wanted to have a Saturday morning practice. And they said, oh, the kids won't come on Saturday. I said, well, they got to, because that's a big part of it. That's when you 2 platoon, that's a day when you get to work with your younger kids. You get a 2-day head start on treating injuries. So it was very, very important for us. But you know, that was the those are probably the 2 main things that were different. And of course, you know, we tried to run a discipline program.
Cory, one thing that it seemed that we had from a transitional standpoint, you didn't change anything. You had a lot of the same staff, and that helped a lot. But I want you to reflect back when you were a kid growing up, wanting to get out there, and you're seeing this thing kind of being built right in front of your eyes. Your dad was a member of the coaching staff. As you recall from some of those early memories, going into that 2 platoon system, I would think that would have given everybody hope that they're going to get a chance to play.
Well, you know what, I can remember my dad coming home and talking to my mom about meeting Chris, and big, you know what I mean, young guy that has some different ideas, and he thinks we can go 2 platoon football, and my dad wasn't sure if we could actually pull it off, and to be honest with you, and he said, but this guy is super organized, knows exactly what he wants to do, has everything in place, and we're going to run with it, and there's an excitement in the air. And then I can remember as a boy sitting up in the stands, you know, when the guys ran on the field the first time, just the sheer excitement from the staff themselves. And I don't know if you ever look back at clips in those old days from 1973, every play at all, there may have been a 15-yard gain and someone came up and made a great tackle, our sideline, led by the coaches, would just explode, and it breathed excitement back into a program that was essentially dead at the time.
One thing that was apparent, especially from the broadcaster standpoint, when you're up high, you watch, there's no showboating going on by the student athletes in the Penn Football Program. Chris, you kind of set the time. If you're going to celebrate, you're going to go celebrate with a teammate. You're not going to do any of that kind of nonsense. You kept the team unity. Was that difficult to sell in the early stages?
Not difficult to sell at all. I mean, I had to let the players know I love excitement, I love celebration. I said 2 things that go without saying are you don't want to taunt an opponent and you don't want to get a penalty. I said those go without saying. I said my only rule is when you want to celebrate, find a teammate to celebrate with. And they like that. And even down with the All-Stars, they wanted to know if last summer, they said, do we have high school rules on end zone celebrations? Well, it made me feel good they asked the question because I could tell they weren't intimidated too much by the MIC players. They were talking about end zone celebrations. But I said, yes, there are, and I told a little anecdote about Lou Holtz and when he coached the spring game, and I told him that I want to see enthusiasm, but always with a teammate, and they carried that to an extreme. We had an interception. The other 10 players picked him up or carried him off the field, and the offense was running out trying to high-five him. And it was just, they realized when you go help somebody else celebrate their big play, they're going to come help you celebrate yours.
Corey, one thing is very, very apparent, still to this day on the sidelines, when a big play is made, you're the guy out there, and you are the Energizer buddy on steroids, man. You are excited about the play, and that excitement breeds excitement against your kid with your kids.
Well, first of all, it's a great game to play. It's a great game to coach. The excitement is there already, and when the excitement leaves, it's probably time to get out and step down and let somebody else do it. But I'm excited every time we run through that tunnel. I mean, we are very, very fortunate to play the game we get to play, and we're gonna love the experience.
Let's just talk about the coaching. Chris, let's start with you. Making decisions on number one, on your initial staff. That kind of had to set the tone. And you've told me stories in years past that those war room, when you guys got together, were some knockdown, drag-out fights. But at the end of the day, when you sat down with the team on Monday, it was a unified group. So let's just talk about some of those funny stories, if we can share those with your coaches.
Well, one great thing when I came here, Dean Spiker was a superintendent. He made every coach in the system resign. And I got to meet every one of them and hire back the ones that I wanted to hire back. And, I found out then the coaches from 7th grade on up were hungry. They wanted to win. Everybody bought in. So that was not a problem. And then once we got everybody on the same page, they gave out a lot of authority and a lot of responsibility, and they liked that too. The thing that impressed me about Cory when he took over the job, he was still Cory Yeoman. He didn't try to be me. He didn't try to be Lou Holtz. He was Cory Yeoman, and some people wondered, said, can you have that kind of jump up and down enthusiasm and still be the head coach? I said, yeah, you got to be yourself, and he was, and the record shows it's worked out tremendously for him.
Cory, when you made the transition, did you make any changes in regards to coaching, or you just say, hey, listen, we're just going to turn the pages?
Well, to be honest with you, Chris, that was Chris's thing, one of his biggest things when we were talking about the transition and leading up to it. He said probably the toughest thing when I stepped down, Cory, is naturally that Hall of Fame coaching staff. A lot of these guys are going to be retiring. Chuck retired, a year before, and Dad and Gees got out that very same year, and Donnie and Art weren't too long after that, 2 or 3, 4 years after that, stepped down as well. And he said the toughest thing you're going to have to do is hire a staff. And he said, by far, that's probably the biggest job that any head coach has to do. So I feel very, very fortunate with the guys we had. That's a great thing about coaching at Penn. We've had very little coaching turnover. Pete left when he went down, when Nicole was doing her residency, and then moved right back up when that was over. So we've been very, very fortunate. We've got a great staff that works extremely hard and loves it and is passionate. And I tell you what, it's a group of guys that loves to laugh at each other and laugh with each other, but they're very intense about the game of football as well.
Do they laugh at each other as well?
Oh yeah, you have to. We're usually kidney protectors usually out of practice. You're gonna get jabbed a few times. I guarantee you that.
You both had a chance to coach your sons. Gary was obviously had a tremendous year. Matt and Tim were great players. We'll start with you, Cory. Just talk about the experience of walking out there and seeing Gary play. First time he put on that varsity helmet. I mean, that had to be that's emotional for me just thinking about it.
Well, you can't wait. You're also a parent as well, and you can't wait to him to have his chance. And you just kind of relive all the stuff that you went through and waiting for your chance. And it was one of the greatest experiences I've ever had in my life. And getting to coach Gary for those years and had a blast. And fortunate, you know what I mean, he has a lot of his mom's genes, so he was a pretty good player, you know what I mean, and didn't take after his dad. So, I mean, it was a great experience.
Chris, how about you? Matt and Tim, what a great experience for you.
Yeah, it was probably the greatest experience that I've had coaching. I mean, I've had a lot of exciting things happen, but that was just, you know, absolutely special the way it worked. I remember Donnie Monhout, when Brad graduated, he said, "Oh man, it's going to be different." I told him, I says, "I found out it's going to be easier and it's going to be fun." I mean, when Matt was running the offense, I mean, the first thing, I'm responsible for the whole program. Then I was really nervous about our offense with Matt running it. Then I was worried about Matt's performance. I mean, you just got so many type things you're worried about. The year Matt was gone, you just get back, you know, to coach the team again, and you didn't have to worry about, you know, about your own son doing this or doing that. And it's not something that was obvious. As a matter of fact, I don't know if a lot of coaches, our coaches knew it was going on, but still, you know, when you get your son out there in a key position, you're thinking about it, and you're looking at the game from a lot of different angles when you got your son playing.
You know, on the same family note, you've had a chance to, I mean, your wives have been awesome. Mom has been there, so it's been an interesting dynamic. Chris, Jane's also a teacher and was so actively involved in a lot of different things. Let's just talk about the whole buy-in by the Geesman family, and likewise, Cory, for the Yeoman family. You know, your mom and dad were just the patriarchs of the program really in the early stages. Mm-hmm. Chris?
Well, I remember the first year we went down to the state finals, every mile there's a big sign that said, "Go Penn." Marilyn and my wife, they took off and they drove all the way to Indianapolis, every mile stopping and putting up a sign. So that was kind of neat, and they loved to go to games together, and they were loud, probably some people said obnoxious. And I'll tell you something, my wife said, "I learned one thing tonight. If you're a male and the national anthem plays, you don't take your hat off, you better hope you're not around Marilyn Yeoman." But they used to get to games. I mean, as soon as school was out, they'd leave and go. They'd be there 2 hours before the gates had opened just because they wanted to get a good seat.
Cory, let's talk about Marilyn, first of all, being there, and as Chris alluded to, and then of course now Sean. Give us an idea. I mean, you've had two women in your life who are the face of the program.
Sure, I can remember riding those games with my mom and Jane before I was playing, and they're right, they were passionate. You think we're passionate, they were passionate about Penn football and loved it and lived it and screamed it and yelled it and enjoyed every second of the way. I mean, we're very, very fortunate to have, people like Jane and my mom involved, and because, you know, we couldn't do what we do without a Jane or a Marilyn Yeoman or a Sean Yeoman. It allows us so much more freedom to do what we do. And then also, you know, that probably some of the biggest cheerleaders in the stands are going to be there because your wives and mom they're going to be up there, and it kind of makes every place you go feel like home.
One thing, Chris, you tell one of my favorite Penn stories is when you guys were going to make the change on defense. You were going to change the defenses. You sent the defensive staff over and you sat down with some of the Snyder guys. If you can just talk about that with Cory in person about making the changes on the defensive front for the defensive scheme a few years ago.
Well, they were wanting to make the change. We have 5-2. It's all I ever played. All anybody ever played. They called it the national defense. And I knew it like the back of my hand. And they wanted to go to a 4-4, and I could see where it would fit our people better. But the thing was, I walked out one Monday, and they were doing a half hour of just their adjustments to what the other team was doing. I mean, if you're in a 3-deep, strong safety concept in the secondary, a thing like a tight end trade is major. And and it took them a half hour just to walk through the adjustments. And we did the same kind of things, and we played Snyder, and they played the 4-4, and we did all the stuff, and they never moved. The only thing you could do to Snyder is you could make their strong side linebacker be the weak side linebacker. That's all you could do. I mean, they'd move maybe 6 inches. I mean, they were concentrating on what you were going to do, not what you were doing. So I knew that's what we wanted to do. And, it was all really Donnie, Cory, and Wally did it. And I said, here's the deal. If you can answer all my questions on it, we'll do it. Well, they went out and they worked hard all winter and the spring. So the spring we met before we started 7-on-7, and they couldn't answer some option responsibility questions I had. So I said, we're not going to do it this year. And they were despondent, probably mad, everything. And but they've gone to Western Illinois. They've been all over. Well, that story kind of got out of the clinic. We wanted to change. And this is the great thing about football coaches, I think. Russ Bush and Russ Isaacs from Snyder, they said, come down and talk with us. We'll help you out with whatever problems you got. So they went down there and met with the Snyder staff, and they came back and they had it down perfect. And I think now we should have gone to it earlier, because the first year we went to it was 95, 96, 97, we won the state. I'm saying, why weren't we doing this before?
Cory, you share your side of that story.
Well, my side of the story is this: he's one of the, he's got a lot of reasons why he's won so many championships and so many games. He has a way to push buttons, and he may act like he didn't want something to be done, but he kind of stirred the pot enough and got this thing going. But that is true, and they used to always laugh. Dad and Gees would always talk about, you've got to run it through your own laboratory before you try it out on the game field. And the point was, you had to, the first time you try something, there's going to be things that pop up that you're not ready for, and that's what Gees was talking about when we couldn't answer some of the questions that he had, and they were great questions. And that's what a great staff will do. They'll quiz each other and help each other grow, which will help the team grow. And then that's exactly what happened. And then the beautiful part about those other staffs, whether it be Coach Rainson when he was at Indiana State and us going down there and meeting with those guys, or Coach Ike, up there with Coach Bush and his staff. Coach Tittman was there at the time, a young coach, I think maybe his first year coaching. When we made the change, they were very, very helpful. And that's a beautiful thing about college, and more so about high school football coaches. They'll share information with each other. Now, there's times that at Penn High School, there was one summertime that the Snyder staff was at Penn, the Hobart staff was at Penn, and the Jimtown staff was at Penn, and we're going over, and the Carmel staff was at Penn. Now you think about the championships those guys run, and we're all sharing ideas with each other and holding nothing back, and that's the way you grow, and that's the you want to beat each other when we're playing on those Friday nights, but I'm going to tell you what a great fraternity of people to be associated with.
You talk about wanting to beat your opponent, and you guys have really, Chris, you set the tone early about respecting every one of your opponents as if they were playing I hate to use this term, the 85 Bears. I mean, you treated everybody as if they were playing, the greatest team in the history of football. And that mindset went through all the players. We were just here with Parker Atkins a minute ago, and he talked about the importance of treating everybody with respect. So let's just talk about treating your opponents with respect.
Well, I could give you a scenario how we could lose any game that we played. I mean, a fumble here, a long kickoff, or anything, I could get in the game that they were expected to have with us. That's not the game. They're up to. I could give anybody that scenario, and our kids used to. They would sit there and listen, but I don't know how much they believed it. They always thought they were going to win. And I found out after the season, Eric Clausen and Matt were over at our house and said, we really hated it when you were positive and telling us that, when you were positive, that meant that you thought we had a chance to get beat, and you wanted us to, to keep our heads up in this and don't worry. But he said, when you were telling us how good the other team was, we knew we were going to win.
Or you haven't missed a beat in the same mindset.
Well, I mean, that's important. I mean, there's a lot of great teams, and part of this business and part of this job is we see things a little bit different than everybody else does. We see the opponent's strengths and what they have and the certain weapons they can do to exploit maybe some things that we have. And I guess that's maybe it's a curse as well. I always tease Gees now. Gees used to probably throw up on my shoes before every game. I mean, nervous wreck, and whether we were playing the Sleepy Dog High School, you know what I mean, that never had played before, or the great team, didn't make any difference. His nerves were always going, and he was always a nervous wreck before the game. And he sees me now before he does the radio show, before every game we talk, and he's telling me, oh, we're going to be fine. I said, man, you used to get sick on my, you know what I mean? What's happened to you? He goes, I see the game a lot clearer now, Cory. I said, I'm not buying that. So
You guys also have created a dynamic where there's no such thing as rebuilding. Rebuilding isn't even in your vocabulary, Chris, Cory.
No, I mean, that's the biggest mistake I ever made was in 1980 when I said we the year after Cory, we played basically mostly seniors, 19, 20, and I just said it's going to be a rebuilding year, and I just thought, boy, is that not fair? That is not fair at all to anybody. And so I never used that term ever again after 1980. And the other term I never use is overachieve. Kids didn't like it. I got it from Jimmy Wainwright. He said, he was a great kid, and I said, he's an overachiever, and he says, I wish you wouldn't call me that. He said, I can play and I want a starting job. So I realized then, if you achieve, you're an achiever. You're not an overachiever. If you achieve, you're an achiever. And there's no such thing as a building year. So, I mean, those are two things I believe, and, you know, I learned them along the way. It just didn't come innately.
Cory?
I had the lucky part, I got to learn from Gees, and every year have high expectations for your team. The team has to have it, you have to have it, no matter who's back or who's not back. No matter what happens along the way, who gets hurt, what happens, you know, life's about how you handle what happens.
In the off season, I always said the same thing. People in the winter, they're going to say, how do you think we'll be next year? And I always said the same thing. We work so hard and our plan is so sound that we not only expect success, we deserve it. And that's just the way I felt about it, and I want the kids to feel that way.
Talk about Cory Yeoman, the football player.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the best we ever had there, and a tough kid. The only time I really had to get mad at him is we were playing Clay, and they came out on they'd come out to the 50-yard line, and then they'd do the karaoke across the 50. Well, Cory and Kent Pietrowski and Marka, they noticed that they were on our side of the 50 by this much. So next thing you know, they're out there, and any time a Clay kid stepped on our side of the 50, they forearmed him. I said, Cory, we're going to start out again, 15 yards penalty. You can't be doing that. But I just like that. Had a lot of pride in the program, and you never had to worry about him being ready to play.
Cory, what do you recall about Cory the player?
Well,
you as a player.
You know what? I played with 10 other guys in that wild bunch of defense that were great players, and that's what they preach as a staff. I mean, it's the pride of the unit. You know, Bo used to always say, great defense is knowing where your help is and play hard together, and that's it. I mean, I was very, very fortunate to play with a lot of great players, both offensively and defensively. I mean, our offense bailed us out multiple times. We had some explosive guys over there and great defense. So great team to play for, a great group of guys to grow up with, and it was the 79 team was a magical year.
The terminology, Dalton and I were talking about this earlier about the gold rush, and the wild bunch. Chris, what are the origins of those?
Well, it was, I guess it started back around 70, I don't know where 70, I mean, it was just like we wanted to have some pride in our unit. And so the Wild Bunch, we put that on the front of your helmet. And we tell her, if you're going to wear a Wild Bunch sticker and go out there where they can see it, if you're not the Wild Bunch, they're going to laugh at you and make fun of you and point at that sticker. And I said, the Gold Rush, you got to put that on the back of your helmet. Because when you run by, I want some defender on his back, turn around. Who was that? Masked man, and see the gold rush on the back of the helmet. So that's kind of the way they started it, where they were placed. But we'd messed around with other nicknames before, but the ones that we finally decided on were probably back in the mid-'70s, and was Gold Rush and Wild Bunch. I like that.
You guys have gone without any names on the backs of the jerseys, with the exception of certain times of the year. Cory, you want to talk about the traditions of getting your name on the back of your jersey?
Well, you have to have a successful tournament run to get those on there, and that's something Geese started. And so if you want that, then you have to have a heck of a run. And if you don't have that kind of run, you're not going to get it on the back of your jersey.
How important was that for most of the players to realize that, hey, listen, we achieved exactly what Coach said. Now we're going to be able to go out and play with our names on the back of their jerseys?
I'm going to tell you this, to be honest with you. What we just talked about before, the Gold Rush and the Wild Bunch sticker, that was the thing that was cherished. It still is. And you know, if you're lucky enough to get one of those on your helmet, that's what everybody coveted.
Let's talk about the dynamic of Freed Field. It became a difficult place for opponents to play. The guys played there, and then I remember being there on numerous occasions where it was the seniors' last game. And prior to the field turf, they get out there and they water down and they'd slide across in the mud. But what's Freed Field? Think about that, Coach. What do you think about the dynamics of Freed Field?
Well, I'll tell you from an opposing coach's point of view what he told me. It was Jim Belden in Carmel. This is a big school too. He said when they came up there in '95, first of all, and he told me this in the winter, he said, we were excited that Portage got beat. That's what we're nervous about. And we played the next day and they didn't even come up to scout. And when they heard we won, they were very excited. So I was a little leery they didn't come up and scout. But he said their team outwardly was very confident all week. But he said they were talking just like a normal team coming up here. When they got on the Lincoln Way and saw Penn High School 1 mile, he said things got kind of quiet. And he could hear them whispering. He said, when we got to the corner, Bittersweet and Jefferson, they saw Penn High School. He said there's not one sound made until they pulled on in. So I know it was a little bit intimidating. I know Charlie Adams told me that so many teams he saw were beaten just by coming into Freed Field. He said they're just by looking around, they're beat. He said you can tell it. And he told me, he said they see that pen on the helmets and they see Freed Field. He said if you're playing the blind school, you try to fire. I said the blind school especially because they can't see the pen on the side of the helmet, so you really got to be ready for them. But yeah, there's a special aura at Penn, and you know we take it for granted. I mean that it's going to be there, and so it's going to be there. But when you talk to opponents, how they hate to come out, that makes it.
Cory, Freed Field
Community, the fan base. Is second to none. What it's like, you know, to run through the tunnel. I'm sure it sings, you know, sends tingles up and down my spine every time I do it now, and I'm sure as an opponent that's not fun to see either.
I'll tell you another thing. Phil Teagard said he used to intimidate his guys. He said they'd be running out, and he saw this even after he retired from coaching, came and watched games. He said the other teams were screaming, jumping up and down and everything and hitting each other in the helmet. Here comes Penn walking on out for the warm-ups. Just no sound, no anything, just walking. And he said the other end, all of a sudden it gets real quiet and they're watching Penn walk. He said that, just little things like that intimidate you.
All right, final question before we get into the guys. When you started this thing and you look back on changing the mindset of expecting to win versus winning. You had to come in here, you had to clean house, everything was different. What was changing their minds, knowing that they could win, the ultimate victory when you think about it?
Well, I don't know, because I'm gonna tell you something, once you start winning, that just becomes an expectation. I'll never forget when Crown Point had a couple undefeated seasons, couldn't win the sectional.
Right.
He called me over and says, what? Tell me something magic, tell me something to do. I said, all you gotta do is win it once, and then it's gonna fall in line. People ask us at the first state championship, what was it like? I said, we were sitting in our hotel room at night and saying, why haven't we done this before? This isn't this hard. And once you start winning and you know it's possible, I mean, pretty soon you want it, then you pretty soon you figure out what it takes to win, and you just do it. And I just think, that's the thing. The kids, like say, our plan is so sound, we work so hard, we not only expect success, we deserve it. We deserve to win. And I think our kids, I remember an old Northwestern coach came by, back in the days before Barnett, and we were talking, I said, Doug, our kids just think they're gonna win every game. He says, don't ever underestimate that. He said, Northwestern, we think we're gonna lose every game. He said, I just can't, we'd love to have your problem. So I just think, that's the thing. And we're always positive, and when we're so negative, it's so obvious what we're doing, the players see right through it. So I guess you'd say we're always positive.